Today on the HopeFilled Financial Podcast, I share with you a story from my dating life. Whether or not it is good or bad, dating advice will be left up to you. After that, we're going to cover today's budget tip regarding old budgets. Today's listener question brings up a type of budget we did not cover in episode 18. And for the main topic, we interview a couple who has been very successful with their financial career. We ask them about their story and how they grew to manage money together. You won't want to miss it. Good morning and welcome to the HopeFilled Financial Podcast. My name is Jay Disberger, your one and only HopeFilled Financial Coach, and I'm happy you're here with us today. I want you to imagine this. Imagine me, single, not dating anyone, just kind of going about my life in college. I was somewhat obsessed with my own budgeting at this point. This would have been around my 5th year of college. I had a spreadsheet that I thought was just the ultimate of all budgeting spreadsheets. It was working really well for me, and I was pretty proud of it. I ended up sharing the spreadsheet with a number of my friends in school because, well, it was a tool that made my life better, and I wanted it to make their lives better. One friend whom I shared the spreadsheet with was Amanda, my now wife. So here's how this went. I ended up sharing the spreadsheet with Amanda, and on the whole, it had a nice little summary that totaled up everything that you had for the year's worth of budgeting and actual spending. It was a summary that kind of conglomerated everything, but it didn't break down the summary from month to month so you could see how your spending was changing throughout the year. It simply had a lump sum total. It was Amanda's birthday, and she invited me to her birthday party, along with a number of her friends, roommates, and cousins. Collectively, as the birthday party, we went on a lovely walk through the Cons Prairie and then returned back to Amanda's place for cake and ice cream. Anyways, Amanda's birthday went from the afternoon to evening. Dinner time rolled around, and all of her cousins and friends had to go back and do their own thing. They had plans, they had obligations. I didn't. I said I would join her for dinner, and she said, maybe you can help me with the spreadsheet that you gave me for budgeting. I was more than happy to help with the spreadsheet that I made. You know, I made it. If someone's going to change something on it, I was going to be the one who could do it most efficiently, right? So after dinner, I asked her, what can I do to help you with the spreadsheet? She said that she wanted the summary to be broken down into the different months throughout the year. That involved quite a bit of work, but I figured out how to do it. I had to basically sort of reinvent the way that the spreadsheet functioned at the core and split out the summary so that it could search things month to month, so that when you put the dates in, it could isolate and search through the data to create the summary on a totally different tab. As I was going through and I was working and thinking through, Amanda looked at me and she had this line that sticks in my brain. It's one that we like to bring up still. She goes, I just really want your brain. And this is the part where something sort of clicked in my mind without even thinking, without processing what I was saying. I was like, well, you can have my brain, that's all right, but I'm sort of attached to it, so this is a whole package deal. She laughed, and it wasn't even like an uncomfortable laugh. It was just a laugh. It was funny. And I was inside just like in full-blown panic mode. I just said that. I just said that. Oh, no, this is my friend. This is her birthday. We're not even dating. We talked about that before and decided not to, and then here I am with that line. And I was struggling with, I had said that until the next day. And, that Monday we had Bible study. We met after Bible study and I came to her and I was like, so, about that dating thing. And that's the story that kind of led us on the path to actually dating, getting engaged, and then getting married. And ultimately, it sort of stemmed from this little decision of sharing this budgeting spreadsheet. And we had basically talked about money management then and budgeting and that sort of stuff before we even dated. And as far as dating advice goes, I can't say that that's the way that it'll work for everybody. It worked for me, but I think I just got lucky. And now that I've shared that with you, it's time for today's budget tip. For the budget tip today, save your old budgets. When you are budgeting year to year, like the summary that I made in the story, it's nice to know what last year was or 2 years before, or let's say there's something that happens every other year. you might want to know how much you spent on it back then. Sure, inflation's going to make things change and life changes. It's going to be different. But when you have an expense that doesn't come up very often, it's really nice to have a reference to see how it went before so you can be better informed planning today. I keep an archive of every budget that I've ever written right alongside my tax records, and I've looked back at them quite frequently. Now it's time to answer a question submitted by you. Today, Amanda asks, in episode 18, you covered 5 different types of budgets. What about You Need a Budget, or YNAB? Thank you, Amanda, for asking your question today. It's funny that you bring up YNAB. I had recorded a bit about YNAB, or You Need a Budget. I talked about their podcast, and I went through their website and talked about how the You Need a Budget system is very different. In a short summary, it is a subscription-based budgeting program that encourages you to budget money that you receive and have on hand as you receive it, and basically get ahead and age your money. They use different terminology and a different thought process that does deviate it from other budgeting systems. It works very well for some people. And in order to fully answer your question, I think it would be most appropriate to release the content that was cut from episode 18 covering YNAB. If you go to the HopeFilled Financial Podcast YouTube channel, we've released it there. There will be a link to the bonus video that covers YNAB in the podcast description below. If you get to see that episode, please leave a comment on it and let me know if there was anything that I didn't answer about YNAB, and we can discuss You Need a Budget in more depth in the future. And if you would like to have one of your questions answered on the podcast, please send it to us through the comments or message us via our website. With that, let's move on to the interview for today's main topic. I'm happy to introduce you to Michael and Vicky. All right, for today's main topic, joining us are Michael and Vicky. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Michael. I'm a software engineer. I don't know if there's anything else to say. I mean, married to Vicky. There you go.
And Vicky?
I'm Vicky. I was an accountant, and now I'm a stay-at-home mom.
Okay, and how old is your little one?
She is 5 months old.
5 months old, yay. And how do you like being a mom versus an accountant?
I absolutely love it because she's now smiling, and it's super exciting to see me when I wake her up and stuff.
And are you both past the point of sleep deprivation?
No.
We didn't sleep last night.
Aww. Well, it gets better. But I asked you to be on the podcast today because Michael caught me after church one day. Or it was the Knights meeting, right?
Yeah,
it was a Knights meeting. And we were talking about managing money in marriage a little bit, and you were sharing a little bit of your story, and I was like, okay, I got to have you two on just to kind of share how your journey with money and marriage has been together. So the first thing I want to ask you is, how did you manage money before you were dating, engaged, and married? As individuals, what did you do?
So I'll start off because I was way less on the ball than Vicky was with this kind of stuff. I thought I was doing good. You know, you're like, I am good at this. And then you meet someone that's like several orders of magnitude more put together. And you're like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing at all. Like, I'm lost. So I thought I was doing good with, I think at the time, the recommendation was 7% into savings. And then just watching my in versus my out. And as long as I'm trending upwards, I was like, I'm doing a good job. Make sure I set aside some money out of every paycheck into my savings, and then we're hunky-dory, right? Very basic, straightforward, didn't put much thought into that past it.
So you were tracking things. You're tracking savings and go, watching your savings positively trend.
Yep.
Were you writing budgets down in advance of engaging with? Okay. And how about Vicky?
So, for retirement stuff, I was saving anywhere between 10% to 30% of my paycheck. And then I also had stuff that was in savings, and I had multiple CDs to make sure, especially when the interest rates were high. I started really young and did stocks. And so I was doing stocks that had dividends. So I was getting that kind of income coming in as well.
Okay. And how'd your accounting background impact the way that you managed money?
It probably did honestly a little bit, because I think it was just help from my parents, because my parents had stock, and I was 14 when I bought my first stock, so it was PetSmart, because everybody loves their pets, and so that's why I thought it was a good one. And my parents were like, yeah, this is great. No, this is going to be weird. It's not good. It's not doing good. And then it took off, and they ended up buying it themselves. And then later on, I wanted another one, and it was Intel. And my parents were like, oh, this doesn't seem like it's doing good. And then it ended up being really good. And then my parents were like, oh, I guess we should go buy that one next too. So once I went to college and learned more stuff, I was able to analyze a bit more things, instead of being like, well, computers are important and everybody loves their pets and wants their pets to be, it's like, yes, but now I can analyze how is the company doing and stuff, or just how, looking at the return of, the interest rates, instead of just putting it aside.
Did you consider yourself a finance nerd then? Through all this? No?
No, I thought there was always ways to do better.
Okay. And Michael, did you consider yourself a finance nerd at any point?
Not remotely.
No. Okay.
Not even. Didn't even cross my mind.
Okay. Did you have any preconceived ideas of how, you're going through life, you're doing your thing, you might get married someday. Did you think about what managing money would be like in marriage at all?
In my head, it was always, this is always going to be a negotiation. You always have to, there's not one way to do it. You're going to have to work out together how to do it. And I'd heard a lot of different theories and ideas about stuff. One that I wasn't a huge fan of, mostly because it rubbed me the wrong way, because it's kind of like a trust issue, is a lot of times people would say, well, you need to have a separate account for your money for recreation for each of you. And it's like, well, if you've got to hide your recreation money so that the other can't criticize how you use it, it's like you're probably already in trouble, is kind of my look at that. And so I've been very happy with how we've been doing the joint accounts, and we just talk to each other when we're doing stuff, or what we want to do something, and when we're looking at things, and that's been going well so far.
Where did you get the advice to possibly have separate accounts for recreation? Do you recall?
It would have been some of my coworkers.
And would they have given you that advice when you were engaged, before you were married, or after you got married?
Before. They may not have been the best guys to take married financial advice from, because the one was having his motorcycle parts shipped to the office so his wife wouldn't know.
Oh, okay. And Vicky, did you have any ideas before either getting engaged or being married about how money management would be?
Well, I wanted to make sure whoever I was going to get married to at the time was that they value money the same, kind of money is important, saving is important, because I didn't want someone that was just going to just spend wild. And I was like, because I know people that, yeah, they have basically one of them can't save anything, so their wife is basically having to give them an allowance, and I didn't want to have to be I need the person to be responsible for money, but also wanted to come in kind of as a partnership of, we will discuss, maybe one of us would be, I kind of wanted one of us to be the person overlooking at it, so that we don't, but it's still a partnership of, because I wanted a partnership of funds, partnership of just, how we're going to spend it. And
so I need to know, when it came to dating, getting engaged and stuff, when was money first brought up, and who brought it up and why?
I probably brought it up pretty soon. When we were dating, we did this thing called interesting questions.
Okay.
And so we would just ask questions. It could be random, what's your favorite color kind of thing, or just,
yep.
But it kind of involved of getting more and more in depth. And so I wanted to know, I think this is before I saw Michael's car. I was kind of car, you like, because something about
yeah, you asked if I would ever consider getting a Tesla.
Yes. And he said no. And so
I pretty vehemently said no and went on to describe that it would be a waste of money and it's more of a status symbol than an actual useful purchase. And apparently that was the right answer.
That was the right answer.
Yes, because I wanted to make sure, because I thought they were too expensive for, especially at that, I mean, still at this time, but at that time, and I did not want to make sure that so they were able to manage their money well. And so I asked, I know Michael, what he was doing. I know he told me some of the stuff, and I was like, "You're doing terrible."
Yep. She then proceeded to help me fix my finances because I was doing it wrong. Yeah.
And so you were dating or engaged at this point?
Dating.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I told him I was doing terrible, and so
I told one of my friends about that, and he lost it with me. He yelled at me that I was literally destroying wealth was his comment about how I was managing my money. I was like, thanks, dude. Vicky's fixing it, so don't worry about it. Yeah. Yep. Apparently I was doing it all wrong.
So how far into dating were you? How many weeks or months or years before the money thing came up?
That would have been 2 or 3 months in.
Yeah.
It was pretty early.
Okay.
I mean, and she pointed it out with the interesting questions thing. It was just a way for us to, it was something I started doing because I wanted to be dating with intent. I didn't want to be dancing around issues and whatever. It's like I wanted to get to important questions quickly, and so by doing it, like, here's an interesting question, right? And hypothetically, in this situation, what do you think, or how would this work out? And so we would trade off, and so we could both fish for important things that we wanted to know, or just throw out a lighthearted question if we just wanted to have fun, right? But it was a safe space kind of to ask those kind of questions.
Yeah, because I think I asked you the Tesla one few weeks after dating.
Yeah, that was pretty early. That's true.
Right after we saw a movie.
Yes.
I really like how intentional you all are, and I appreciate how much more lighthearted that was than my approach. So just for sharing with the listeners, my approach when Amanda and I were dating was I had heard from the Dave Ramsey show that you had to agree on 4 things with a future spouse before you got engaged or got married, and it was religion, money, existing family, you had to tolerate at least sitting around the Thanksgiving table, and then future family, how many kids you wanted. So right after we started dating, I was like, all right, these are the 4 things that I'm going to be looking at for us to discuss as we're dating. And if we can find agreement on them, then things will probably work out. And if we can't, well, that would be the deal breaker. I was just very upfront with them. Yeah, and it's like, would you like to talk about one or all of these tonight?
Here's the survey. Please fill this out. Return it.
Yeah, there was nothing romantic about the way I presented the information in that, but I guess it worked out for me in the end. I don't know.
You did something right. I don't think it was that, but you did something right.
That's great. So after getting engaged, you've talked about the Tesla. You've discussed things throughout dating. You get engaged. How did you go about preparing for married life in the way of personal finance after getting engaged?
So I set up a budget for when we were engaged for what we were going to spend for the wedding.
Nice.
And was also very much like, so if I've already purchased stuff before we were engaged, does that count as going towards the budget? Because I had purchased my wedding dress before we got engaged. So I was like, he's like, well, yeah, of course it counts. And I'm like, oh, okay. So
it was purchased for the wedding, and we're talking about the wedding budget. Obviously, it's part of the wedding budget. I think that's only logical.
Yeah. But then, so I had that set up pretty much right after we got engaged. And then we decided that we were going to buy a house.
Yep.
So because that was one thing that we had discussed, whether or not we wanted to continue living in an apartment, because we both had apartments. And I wanted to live, I had a list of where I want to live. I wanted to live, at my church, still, and go to there, which Michael was like fine with, but
The funny bit about that she's not sharing is she asked me after laying out like that she wanted to be in this area and if that was okay with me, and I was just like, yeah, that's fine. And she's like, well, I have all these reasons why this is a good idea, so I'm going to tell you anyway. Like, so she was so ready for me to disagree or not want to do that, and I'm just like, yeah, that's fine. And so she's like, well, I'm going to tell you anyway. Like, I was ready for an argument, and I have all these arguments now, and then I just need to get them out there. So, yeah, it was pretty funny. When we bought the house, we got pre-approved together via Vicky's bank because we were going to use her savings for the down payment because she had a war chest. I was just, still building mine up. I didn't have that much. Definitely not in comparison. But what was funny is because she's been so good with her money, she's bought everything her entire life in cash. Like, she showed up with the amount that she's needed no matter what she's getting. I had been taught early on that one of the things you needed to do is you need to build up your credit because, if you want to buy a house, you've got to have good credit, right? So how do you do that? You get like a credit card and you use it for gas and you always pay it off and you never carry a balance, right? Like, keep it really simple. It does one thing and that's all it's for, is to build credit history. So I had been doing that and building credit history. So when it came to actually getting the mortgage and approved for the loan officer was actually like, so we're actually just going to use Michael. And that changed the initial interest rate for the loan from just north of 6% to 4.5%.
Whoa.
Huge difference. Yeah. So, that's another thing to keep in mind is credit history is really important. And even though it was going to be a joint loan anyway, by virtue of Vicky not having the credit history, it horribly hurt us in the loan department.
Well, but you had...
But then I had it. But that's the thing. It's like, even though we were together and I had a really good history, by virtue of her not having the history, it hurt what would have been the loan. So then they just made it mine alone, which is fine given my income. I could still get approved for that amount with the mortgage. But like, if we had needed both of our combined incomes to get approved for that size of mortgage, the lack of credit history would have been a major problem.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Did you do engaged encounter?
We did the lead couple prep for it. So instead of doing like the weekend thing, we did the once a week for like a month or so.
Okay. So we did the weekend thing, Amanda and I, and she had a story in her mind of her parents having a money fight that came out of the weekend. Mm-hmm. And was all prepared to have a money fight with me, specifically over television. And I've shared it on the podcast before, but I care a lot about a nice TV. She doesn't care about TV at all. Mm-hmm. And so when it came up, she was like all ready for a financial argument about it. And she's like, okay, how much money do you want to spend on a TV after we get married? And I'm like, well, I'd really like a nice OLED, possibly around $5,000. She was like, I thought $500 was a lot to spend on a TV. And I'm like, well, how about we settle in the middle and go something like $2,000, maybe a little more than that, like right in the middle. And she's like, how about after saving for it for 5 years to make sure other things are taken care of first? And I said, deal. And she's like, that's it? I'm like, yeah, let's move on. What's the next thing? She's like, but I was ready for more.
Yep.
So
got all ready for a fight. And I was just like, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to share it anyway. I like that. Did you do any other preparation in engagement that was of note?
I mean, I guess it probably wasn't during engagement, but right after we got each other on our accounts, on the bank accounts. But like, we were, fortunate enough not to have any like existing debt or anything. So we didn't have to worry about that. And otherwise it was just when we purchased the house, getting us both on the house and all that stuff. So that, there was that. So yeah.
After you got married, were there any communication surprises that came up in like the first few months? Like, I didn't see that coming.
I just know that we were working on the house stuff. I know
But yeah, well, I would say that was kind of surprising to me because we did a lot of stuff on the house really fast. A little bit of my background is, you could say I understand the value of money because, like, coming from a big family, you know, it was a lot of shared resources. You know, you got to be careful with things, like don't break it because we don't have that much money to go around for, like, not everyone's going to get new stuff, that kind of thing. So, like, I wouldn't hold a kid's iPod in school because I was like, that's too expensive. I don't want that anywhere near me, right? Like, I will break it and then I'll have to pay for it. I ain't got that kind of money, right? You know, I'm that kind of like, oh man, that sounds like a big number. What is it? 100? Ooh, that's a big number, right? So then when doing house stuff, when you're talking about thousands of dollars to improve the house, and we had agreed, you know, for the most part that Vicky is, you know, the primary person in charge of our finances because she knows all the numbers and everything and how to invest it and save it, etc. And, you know, we'll discuss big purchases, but for the most part, she's the final yes or no. So when we're talking about all of these housework, you know, I'd be sitting there talking to whoever the salesperson is, and they'd finally give us a number, and I'd just be like, I look over at Vicky, and she's like, yeah, we can do that. That's good.
Nice.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Great. Sounds great.
Now, backing up just a little bit, did you do a written budget that you talked about once a month or so, or how did you go about communicating a?
So early on, like, we did not have a budget.
Okay.
Because we were both mindful of it. Like I said, if we were going to have a big purchase, whether it was like something with Michael's, you know, like doing computer stuff or something with the house, we would talk about it first. And also like, and vacation stuff. But it's like, so we knew I had saved up so much. So we had a cushion, and I was like, okay, like, we kind of started trending down by looking at our accounts and be like, let's, you know, kind of rein it in and everything. So we would make improvements that way because, like, we were going to wineries and we would buy a bunch of wine. Yeah. Let's not buy, you know, four bottles
in a go. Let's limit it to one, you know, like.
So it was some of that, or so doing vacations, like, let's try to, like, either like the camping, or we had like the Hiltons to make it a little bit cheaper and stuff like that. But we didn't have a written budget then. But since losing my income to be a stay-at-home mom to take care of our kid, we now do have a budget that's like on a spreadsheet that I made. So that way we can keep better track of how much is going in and out for groceries, vacations, random house stuff, just personal items.
What do you think of the spreadsheet budget, Michael?
I mean, so Vicky shows me it like each month when it's done, and it kind of goes over quick, like, this is where we did well, this is where we didn't do well. And I mean, still, that's very abstract to me. I'm like, was it a good month or a bad month? Oh, okay, it was a bad one. We need to rein in what categories? Okay, got it, right? Like, it's I understand it's good to keep track of that, but it's like the specificity of it kind of makes my eyes glaze over.
I know I had to, I guess, figure out all, like, for stuff for the year. And so I have obviously what's the budget, and then and then I record everything that we spend. And then, because sometimes, like, we have, you know, obviously Michael's paycheck, but then I also am recording any interest income or dividend income, or just rather like other random income that might come. I want to record that as well.
Nice. When it comes to recording the other income, I don't remember if I've put this one on a published episode yet or not, but I talk about how if your brain plays a trick on you when you find newfound money through mental accounting. Mm-hmm. Like if you found $1,000, just like on the sidewalk when you leave, what would your brain immediately want to do with the $1,000?
Spend it.
Spend it.
Yeah.
On what?
Whatever.
Just whatever you want.
Right. Yeah.
Splurge.
It's free money.
It's free money. So, but when Vicky's listing out all of the other different types of income that can go up and down and might come across as, free money or, found money, when it's in the budget, it goes towards the goals in the budget. So what it does is it just redirects mental accounting. If you found the $1,000 and go, ooh, we should add this to the budget, you're going to spend it very differently than you would otherwise. So that's one that I think is a fun tie-in.
And he thinks he's going to spend it. That's funny, though.
Yep. Well, yeah, let me change my answer. I'm going to give it to my wife.
Good answer. Good answer.
That's what I meant. Yeah. I said that for the first one.
Yeah, so I picked up pennies and I put them towards our daughter's savings account. And so I've been picking them up. And so I have put $20 in her savings account from all the money I found.
That's awesome.
Just change on the side of the road.
So as we're wrapping up the interview here, if you were each to give 3 bits of advice to couples who are either just newly married or engaged, and they're listening to the podcast now, what 3 words of advice would you give out of your successful experience?
So I'll jump in first. I mean, the first thing I would say is, like, as with all things in marriage, like, your partners work through things, talk through things. Like, neither one of you is going to immediately be on the same page. Like, you're going to have to negotiate. So be willing to negotiate. People are going to make mistakes. You're going to have to be nice about correcting mistakes. Like, that's just marriage in general. But the other bit is, like, don't freak out if you are like, wow, we're not doing nearly that well. That's how are we ever going to get there? It's like, well, a lot of that is we have a leg up. We were raised well around how we manage money. And so that put us in a good place. I mean, neither one of us had any debt going into marriage, not having any debt going in. Well, aside from the house, which we bought together, that's a huge leg up because, debt is what really causes a lot of those arguments, and not having to, find out, oh man, you've got $100,000 in student debt. How are we going to manage that? And we didn't have that problem, right? That makes it a lot easier. So that would kind of be the stuff I would say.
I mean, it's kind of simple, but like, don't be afraid to talk about like finances and money. My parents, I know Michael's parents talked about when we were kids. Talk about it with your kids. Once they, understand a bit better, be like, you have to save this if you want to do anything. Also, if you realize you have a bit more, put it towards your retirement stuff, because that way you don't see it. I mean, as I said earlier, it's like I was saving, a bunch in retirement, and I was able to live off, in my own apartment and everything. And now I have a big, nest egg for later on for us, but just saving and being mindful of what you spend, and is it a need or if it's a want. So.
What advice do you have for people who are trying to figure out their wants and needs and having a way to talk about it? Because what I might perceive as a want or a need might be different than the way Amanda perceives it. So,
well, one of the things right now I want is a pop-up camper.
I would categorize it more as a need, but she's being kind and saying it's only a want for her. But her parents have a pop-up. It was a big part of her childhood, is all of the camping with the pop-up that they did. And as her parents are getting older, the window where Lizzie has to experience camping with her grandparents is closing. So I would say if she's going to experience that's sooner rather than later, which I think puts it into the need category of, like, if this is something that's important to us as a family and something we want our daughter to experience, we got to be willing to put the money down now, right? Like, that's kind of how I would put it. But I mean, I definitely understand, like, it's not vital to life, but it is, I think, vital to, what our priorities are.
Well, I thank you so much for both coming on and talking. I find it difficult to have conversations like this one because money feels like such a taboo topic in society.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's all the more important that we have conversations like this where we can listen and learn and grow together.
Oh, yeah, no, I've actually talked with my friends about money because they asked me questions, and so I was able to help. Like, some of them are married, some of them are single. So,
well, and some of that can be awkward because it's like, I don't want to sound like I'm bragging. So, like, how do I approach this? And and also, it's like, it's unique for everybody. It's like, these are good ideas, but it's not a catch-all for everyone, right? Like, so how do I apply it to your situation? I don't know, but this is what I did and it worked, right?
In personal finance, it's more personal than it is finance. Vicky probably recognizes that with her accounting background. It's very different doing accounting for an employer than it is running your budget at home. And then the other thing is I found that men try to treat money more like a scorecard. It's a comparison scorecard. Like, you know, if you're out there shooting the breeze with the guys and you start bringing up money, well, then it becomes a topper game back and forth with who, and then that can become pretty unhealthy. Comparison is the thief of joy. And I found that women typically look at money as a security. Good savings and positive savings trend, that's comforting, that's safety, that's positive. But if there's a lack of money, then there's a fear there that the guy doesn't even register because he's just keeping track with a different number for his scorecard,
Right.
You know, psychologically speaking. So that makes it difficult to talk about too. But what you've shared with us, what your story on the podcast, I'm hoping is something that listeners can hear and learn from in a way that changes their life moving forward and helps inspire them to make some healthier money decisions. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you being here. Budget bravely and enjoy your hope-filled financial future.